Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our February webinar. I'm very excited about today's topic, our partnership with BOMA on the W Squared Challenge. My name is Dave Hodgins. I'm Executive Director of the LA Better Buildings Challenge. We have 3 guest speakers today. One of our in-house technical advisors, Mo Erbesnik, Sarah Neff, who's the Senior VP of Sustainability at Kilroy and on the board of BOMA and a big part of starting W2, and you'll hear from her about that. And we're joined by Ken Rosenfeld, who's the Director of State and Local Affairs for BOMA International. He's played integral roles in preserving Energy Star and now with taking the waste and water sustainability conversations to the next level. So we have a lot of great content to get through today. I think we'll have enough time for questions. So as usual, please do feel free to submit those through the chat box on the side of the screen. Lines will be muted as usual just to keep things orderly. We will be recording, as always, Q&A at the end, and we'll be sending around copies of the slides and a recording to everybody. But wonderful turnout today and great to see the interest in this topic. By way of context, we can't forget, and I think it's hard to forget that climate change is happening. You know, coming off seasons of record heat, the deadliest, largest wildfires in state history, if not globally. Now it's snowing in the desert and even snowed near my house in northeast LA. So this is happening, and as the mayor recently said, you know, just one wet year and how we respond to that is not what conservation means. It's not what sustainability means. It's about sustained effort and keeping in mind the bigger picture. So a little bit of additional context to put around that. The Sustainable City Plan is now in its 5th year. They're revising that, but a huge focus of that is on water, so very relevant to our conversation today. Looking at efficiency, conservation to hit a 22.5% reduction by 2025, 25% by 2035. This is definitely possible. We saw during the drought reductions beyond this, but after the drought emergency was lifted, lo and behold, numbers have started to creep back up. So we need to keep the awareness, and that's really what this BOMA W Squared campaign is about, and we're very, again, excited to partner with them on this. You may have seen last week, the mayor has come out with a few very big announcements. First, on the energy side, getting towards 100% renewable energy in 10 years. That's ahead of any other timeline announced in the country, perhaps in the world. I'm not sure, I have to double check that fact. But now focusing also on water and recycling 100% of the city's wastewater by 2035. That's a picture of the mayor at the Hyperion water treatment plant. The way these things balance, both on the energy side and the water side, is that by reducing the amount of energy, reducing the amount of water we use, makes it easier to get to 100%, right? So where do those curves cross? Where does efficiency and conservation enable us to get to 100% renewable energy, 100% water recycling on the timeline that we need to get there? This is not optional anymore. I think everybody on this line is familiar with the city's existing buildings efficiency ordinance, EBW ordinance. We're now in year 3 of the top part of this diagram, benchmarking. This is energy and water, which is very unique. I think LA is one of only 2 or maybe 3 cities in the country that's requiring water benchmarking, and by far the largest. So it's an immense and very valuable database, and we'll get to some of the intended uses for that in just a couple slides. But this is now transparent. This graph comes from data pulled from the city's open data portal, and you see that this is a little bit of an eye chart here, but by property type, looking at average water use intensity. But what does that all mean in terms of, you know, which of these are efficient based on the type of property that it is? That's a big question. Only multifamily at this point has a score for water efficiency the way that multiple other property types do through Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So that's one of the things that we're very excited to work on with BOMA and their team of consultants is how can we turn this data and the data that they're tracking through the W Squared initiative to create a definition of what is it to be a water-efficient office property in Los Angeles, and helping to move the needle on that in partnership with EPA as well. So benchmarking is important, and getting a handle on what you're using now, and what we're going to talk about today for the most part is getting into, okay, now what? What are the ways to actually reduce water use, to conserve water and be more efficient with the water that we do use? And so there's this whole second phase of the ordinance, which is going into effect in 2020. And there's a subset of that which focuses on water. This is on a 5-year cycle determined by your parcel number. You can either get a water audit and perform tune-up or retro-commissioning, meet code, if that's feasible for your building, or demonstrate a 20% reduction over the 5-year period, as I was just mentioning. So we're going to talk today about how all of this comes together, how the policy, where the rubber meets the road, and how we're collaborating with BOMA to help deliver some value to BOMA members and trying to get to the compliance targets, but also to get some recognition for your great work that you've already been doing and that you will do, and to see the financial benefits of that as well. Just a quick breakdown. I think most people know this, but where are the big opportunities in typical commercial buildings? If you don't have landscaping, of course, not all buildings do. These percentages change a bit. But one of the things we've done is develop supporting resources to address all of those. So BOMA International, you'll hear from Ken Rosenfeld on the line. It's really providing that national leadership from the private sector on these important issues. The mayor is providing a local policy framework and specific timelines and targets to meet, which really go hand in hand. BOMA GLA is giving this call to action. BOMA GLA, I've been a member of the Sustainability Committee for going on 10 years now. Tremendous leadership, and tremendous leadership exemplified by the members. And so we together want to show the biggest numbers in the country. I think Ken's going to talk about where we're at in that process, how we're doing, but we want to grow that effort and demonstrate some real results. And again, this is something we kind of have to do, and part of because of the ordinance, but you're already doing it. And so let's see, how can we dive deeper, drive deeper savings? And that's what we're here to do. My colleague, Mo Besnick, is going to talk about the resources and services that we offer to buildings that are serious about reducing water use. So with that, I will shut up and hand over to Sarah Neff with Kilroy.
Great. Can everybody hear me? Thank you, Dave, for that fantastic introduction to water and why it's very important in Los Angeles. And we're also going to bring in waste. So I'm Sarah Neff. I'm the Senior Vice President for Sustainability for Kilroy Realty Corporation. But really, for the purposes of this call, I am the Vice Chair of the BOMA International Energy and Environment Committee. And I was part of the team that created the BOMA W2 Challenge. I'll tell you a little bit about why we did that. So BOMA used to have something called the BOMA STARS program, which was and I'll tell you a little story in a second, which was encouraging building owners to benchmark an Energy Star, which they didn't used to do. But now it's time for them to, we felt that program was very successful. Everybody is sort of very embraced, at the very least, voluntary benchmarking. It's very popular. Everybody loves Energy Star. BOMA, I have to give a shout to Ken, who was very instrumental in really making sure that Energy Star got protected in this new administration and still exists. There was a lot of education. But we really felt like it was time to address water and waste for a lot of the reasons that Dave mentioned. We thought it was really important. And it's certainly something, the concept of benchmarking water and waste is something that was driven home to me in my role at Kilroy. So I'll tell you, but first I'll tell you a little story. And that story is about spaghetti. So you can go to the next slide. So I had a building. We still own this building, and we were noticing that our recycling bills were going up, and we couldn't figure out, or our waste bills, I should say, were going up, and we could not figure out why this was happening. Nothing had changed about our service levels, but yet we were getting these really high fees and fines. And when we looked into it further, we learned that what was happening is that our recycling was really contaminated. So we'd gone and done an analysis of it, and we figured out, even though the pickups hadn't changed, when we went to this benchmarking analysis, that we were being charged for a lot more trash than we were for recycling. And then further dug in and asked janitorial, what was happening, because we'd been told that our recycling was contaminated. And they said, well, there's that one floor that has its spaghetti party every Wednesday, and they just dump all the uneaten spaghetti into the recycling. I have so many questions about this. Like, what's this, spaghetti parties? That sounds amazing. I've never heard of a spaghetti party. I would love to be invited. Also, why is there leftover spaghetti? Spaghetti's delicious. But anyway, these folks were wrecking the recycling for the entire building. So we were able to, once we had the data from the benchmarking, we were able to locate the problem. We were able to stick all the extra fees onto this one floor, which shaped up pretty quickly, and the problem was resolved. And without benchmarking, that wouldn't have happened. And so that was one of the sort of experiences I had in my role that really drove home the importance of measuring what's happening with water and waste. And we thought that this, as a voluntary program, would be of a real benefit to BOMA's members. Next slide. And so this is where we came up with a W2 challenge. Now you'll hear a lot more about this challenge and sort of what's been happening with it from Ken later, my good friend Ken from BOMA. But so we launched W2. We informed everybody about the W2 challenge in 17. Its first year was 2018, and it's running through 2019. And it basically asks building owners to input into Energy Star the 2018 and 2019 water and waste data at least every quarter. And that is more or less it in terms of the requirements. Now, there's lots of webinars and best practices being shared. There'll be awards that get announced about who's done the best, and we'll have to sort of crunch those numbers through 19 and announce them next year. But it's a 2-year challenge. So we're benchmarking 2 things, water and waste. It's a 2-year challenge, so W2. And Ken will talk about it later, but the results so far and the enthusiasm for it have been fantastic. And so we have 3 main goals, which is we want to educate people that benchmarking just energy isn't good enough anymore. Now in Los Angeles, we have to benchmark water as well, but we really want to encourage folks to benchmark waste. Waste is something that we're not talking about nearly enough. The entire world of recycling diversion is changing very, very quickly, and it's very, very, very important that we start really reckoning with our waste streams. The other goal is to solicit from great performers best practices and share them on webinars and other publications that we're going to do. And we also really want to recognize achievement. And we are using a company called Waypoint to help us sort of crunch the numbers and figure out who is achieving all that. Next. So I want to just talk about who is involved. So there's sort of 3 main people who are partnering, or 3 main entities that are partnering with this challenge, so you know how everything is sort of fitting together. The challenge is a free challenge, so there's no cost to enroll in it, and so all of that analysis and all of the sort of work and manpower is being funded by Yardi, which is great. BOMA International is created and marketed the challenge, and then it has to be administered through Energy Star. So all 3 of those organizations are in partnership. The timing is great because Energy Star launched its waste tracking feature fairly recently. I think it was 3 years ago. And so this has been a great way to drive adoption. A question I often get is, do you have to do both water and waste? You do not. You can, obviously, we encourage you to do both. But you can do just one or the other. We have buildings where, they have their own water, but the trash is shared by a giant, some sort of association. Like, we get that these things can happen. So no, you're not required to do both. Next. And I want to go into a little more details about the program. So I won't read everything on the slide, but I want to really emphasize what you get for participating, because obviously we really hope a lot more people enroll in the program in the Los Angeles region. Oh, can you go back one? Thanks. Which is your progress reports. So one of my favorite things that I love receiving is, you benchmark every quarter, and then every quarter you get an analysis of how you're doing. And this is really, really helpful, because you're not just benchmarking against yourself, but you're benchmarking against your peers. And it really, in a world without a water score from Energy Star, and certainly not a waste score from Energy Star, we find that intensely helpful. The other thing I want to emphasize is that BOMA is a very effective lobbying organization, and so there are policy recommendations that come out of this work. And also, I really want to emphasize that anybody is welcome into it. One of the things we've often seen is that people get grumbly because, for example, there's only Energy Star for certain asset types and whatnot, but much like the Los Angeles existing buildings ordinance for water and energy benchmarking, everybody can participate. Existing retail, multifamily, office, industrial, churches, we don't care. Everybody's welcome. Next. Great. And we want to just talk about the benefits. So we really want to be able to show all of real estate how much benefit can be gained from water and waste benchmarking. So, for example, with energy benchmarking, there's a lot of data to support that just the act of going through energy benchmarking can earn a building usually around a 1 to 2% energy reduction just by the act of benchmarking. And I know that doesn't maybe seem like a giant number, but for me at Tilray, I target a 2% energy reduction in every building every year. I would kill for a 2% reduction. 2% is a lot for me. So we think it's very impactful. The next thing we want to do is just show, in addition, what the cost savings are and where they come from. For water, we find that it often comes from things like leak detection. This happens to me all the time when I go through with my teams and we say, oh, we see a 25% increase in water. Did you have a major increase in occupancy? And everybody says no. And then usually, inevitably, something in the landscape has broken a line and there's been a leak. Obviously, leak detection is great for interiors. It's very hard to do on an exterior basis, especially now that everything is on drip line. And so water benchmarking is the way that we catch those problems. That's a great example of cost savings. But we also want to really be able to do the analysis. And I'm so happy that Waypoint is crunching all the numbers, because that's really, really their wheelhouse. And the other thing we want to do is figure out what the problems are. What are the problems and what are solutions? I'll give one example, which is, has anybody ever looked at a waste bill? I mean, those things are impossible. They're written in like Gaelic. Your water bills are hard enough to understand. Waste bills, I feel like require an advanced degree, and they change deeply, and even in terms of terminology, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I mean, at least for water, we all agree either on gallons or CCF or both, but waste, sometimes it's in yards, sometimes it's in tiers, sometimes it's just by pickup. And so we're really sort of hoping to be able to provide best practice guidelines to the industry for that. Next. And the next is benefits for participants, which, just like anything, you can't manage what you don't measure. So this is just really going to help everybody who participates better track and understand their water and waste usage. Through those progress reports, you're able to compare your performance against your peers. There's a lot of knowledge that can come to you if you want it. And then obviously you could earn recognition. There is no cost. There's no registration fee to be eligible for recognition. The whole thing is free. Next. And now it is my deep pleasure to introduce my friend Ken from BOMA International, who has been the steward of this program. It's deep, deep advocate, and I think one of the main reasons it has been so successful across our continent. So Ken, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. That was too kind, and I'm sure you can tell, if you didn't know already, how fortunate we are to have Sarah in a leadership position at BOMA International. So a big thank you to Sarah. Let me also start by saying thank you to both BOMA, GLA, and to David and the Better Buildings Challenge of LA for all the great work they do, as well as for hosting today's webinar. I think Sarah did a great job giving the background of the challenge. This is a very important program to us at BOMA International. BOMA has considered sustainability to be really an essential part of our organization. We have a long history of programs promoting sustainability generally and benchmarking specifically. Much of this, of course, revolves around energy efficiency, so it's exciting now to be looking at water and waste as sort of the next frontier. So as Sarah said, it's really a simple concept. Let's focus on water and waste, get properties to benchmark, and start giving ideas on how to take further action. So a great idea. Our question was, would anybody sign up? So next slide, please. We have been overwhelmed by the response. So our friends at Energy Star, for example, suggested that if we got 100 buildings to participate in the U.S., we should consider this a success. But as you can see, more than 2,000 buildings have now signed up across the country, representing more than 300 cities. So most of the country is covered now by participants. All building sectors are well represented, as Sarah said. And perhaps the most eye-popping metric of all is on the bottom, confirming that participants aren't just saying they'll participate, but they're following through on their commitment. Now more than 400 million square feet of property have been shared with the challenge in Portfolio Manager. Next slide, please. And further good news here for us, the Los Angeles market has been a leader in the W Squared Challenge. Not surprising. This slide actually dates back to the fall, which is the last time we did a nationwide analysis, but the numbers have only continued to increase. The markets, as we define them, are roughly defined by zip code. We're trying to capture areas as they're represented by BOMA local associations. But at that point in time, back in the fall, there were more than 130 buildings participating in the LA market, second only to Washington, D.C. in terms of properties. Next slide, please. And here's a nice graphic, just a heat map to give a little visual indication of where the properties are locally. Again, we're greatly appreciative of the level of participation in LA. The folks, as you might imagine, at BOMA GLA and the Better Buildings Challenge are even more excited now that they see they're in second place and they want LA to be number one. I think that's possible. So thank you if you're a participant. If you're not, you can still join, even though we're now 1 year into the challenge. We want people to sign up at any time. This is all about getting participation and getting you the recognition that you deserve. We hope you'll be part of this. This graphic, by the way, is from our data team we mentioned at Waypoint, and some of those folks are located in LA, so please thank them if you see our friends at Waypoint. The market participation, as you see, this is just a snapshot. These are actually the updated numbers for LA current to today, and it's even more good news. First of all, in terms of participation, LA has now 17 organizations participating. We're up to right about 150 buildings, 30 million square feet, and those numbers continue to increase. And I want to highlight that top number, 17 organizations, that actually is number one. That's the highest of any market in the country. And I think that's significant. So it's not that just a few large companies have bought into the challenge, but it's widespread. And so congratulations on being number one. We really appreciate it. This is certainly an indicator of the leadership on sustainability in the LA market. And it's not just participation. The number at the bottom of this slide, you see the average water use intensity for the LA market. Right now, through the numbers we have at the beginning of 2019, we're seeing 19 gallons per square foot is the average. And if that sounds good, we think it really is. The average intensity number for all participating properties in the challenge, everybody across the country, is 32 gallons. So that's a huge difference. So that we think is a tremendous accomplishment already for Los Angeles. As we get into year 2 of the challenge, we look forward to making more conclusions about who's best, who's showing progress and improvement. And as Sarah said, we also hope to have more widespread data on waste diversion so that we can draw some conclusions there. But we think this is really a number that LA should be proud of. Next slide, please. So we're thrilled by what the challenge has achieved already just in terms of participation. In 2019, this will be a year where we can really start to demonstrate year-over-year improvements, as well as getting you additional opportunities for recognition. We're going to try to help by focusing on resource development so that we can get you what you need to help your property do what you're already trying to do. Just to briefly highlight what's in store this year, we'll be increasing the regularity of our webinar series where we can highlight best practices. We'll be collecting and publicizing case studies. If you have a success story, please reach out to me or to Sarah. We want to know about it. We will find ways to highlight your achievements. As one example, recently in BOMA magazine, for instance, we mentioned a building in Phoenix that decided after starting to track their water use, they decided to change out their faucet aerators, a fairly simple, relatively low-cost step. And they found their building water use went down 37%, really an incredible achievement from a fairly simple step. So those are the kinds of stories we're looking for. Please send them to us. We will also be releasing a pair of improvement guides, one on water, one on waste. We're very excited about these. They're essentially checklists that your property can use to make sure you're considering all of the best ideas for improving performance. And eventually, and Sarah started to touch on this, we plan to produce policy recommendations. We want to learn from all of these good efforts from all of you. We want to know what would help. So that might mean a governmental policy. That might mean what information do we think the industry needs to receive from waste haulers. It could mean anything, but we really think that's going to be a nice way to tie up the challenge in the future. Next slide, please. So I'll make the plug again to participate. The program really is simple, and we think we made participation in the challenge very easy. Essentially a lot of benefits, but not a lot of new work. Hopefully a lot of you are doing some sort of benchmarking or tracking already. There's a very basic sign-up form to get you started, and that's really just to make sure we have your preferred contact information. You share your buildings with the Challenges account in Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and then you enter your water or waste data as is convenient for you.
Looks like we may have lost Ken, but I think this was his final slide, so I will step in and pinch hit for the transition here. And thank you, Ken, for that overview. And it is exciting to see, again, that LA is so close to taking over the #1 spot here, and look forward to working with BOMA GLA and all of you to take that and take these numbers home. On the theme of supporting resources, also looking forward to collaborating with BOMA International to share some of what we've developed, which my colleague Mo Besnick is going to walk through now. There's a lot of content here, and it's all available. Again, looking forward to collaborating with BOMA to combine forces and getting this information, polishing it up, and getting it out to folks. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mo Besnick.
Thanks, Dave. So regardless of where you're at in participating with the challenge or in the compliance process or the status of your building, LABBC is here to help you. So if it's W squared benchmarking, ordinance compliance, or just hitting your water savings goals. We do this by providing advisory services to building owners and managers. We provide a full spectrum of support. At your building, we can help you benchmark your use, determine the best water savings opportunities. Then we'll sit down and take a look at the feasibility of implementing each of those opportunities at your properties. We'll also identify all available incentives and help you calculate your cost-benefit analysis. In addition, we can provide you with case studies and proof of technology performance. as well as connect you with other customers so that they can share their experiences and exchange information about vendors, payback, installation issues, and really just support you through the whole implementation process. Next. Next slide. Okay, sorry. A typical starting point is with our water efficiency toolkit. The toolkit is designed to give customers an overview of ordinance compliance and a means to get there. Next. A component of the toolkit are technology primers. It's where our customers start when determining if a technology is a good solution for their properties. The primers provide technology and practice descriptions, factors to consider when implementing measures, price ranges, estimated savings, available incentives, average return on investment, basically all the information you'll need to assess each measure's viability at your property. So there are primers available for irrigation, next slide, plumbing, next slide, and cooling towers. So we chose these three technologies because they provide the best opportunity and payback for LA buildings. Next. So another resource LABBC offers is case studies. Case studies really are valuable because they can take a new or innovative technology and provide the proof of performance, or they can just document real-world savings of proven technologies instead of using engineering type estimates, which will allow you to determine the applicability of specific measures at your property. A special project we were part of was pilot testing dynamic water technologies, which is an electrochemical water treatment for cooling towers, which requires no chemicals. So LABBC advisors introduced the technology to the city, brought in national lab resources, the National Renewable Laboratory, to evaluate the pilot, looking at water savings, energy savings, chemical and maintenance reduction. We did all this, and now the city is operating the towers at City Hall East without chemicals and to the highest water efficiency possible, the highest cycles of concentration. So they've seen nearly 20% water use reduction and annual cost savings of $38,000. And now the city is able to evaluate deploying this technology in other locations. And this case study is available to all participants in the Better Buildings Challenge as well. Next. And not all case studies are, Ken mentioned the project in Phoenix, not all case studies are complex projects or new technologies. As an example, the more common project is Kaiser's upgrades done at their West LA Medical Center. Kaiser looked at virtually every opportunity at the site and implemented the cost-effective ones. This included cisterns for collecting water for irrigations, laminar flow restrictors for their faucets and other plumbing, fixture upgrades, and improved just low-cost cooling tower water treatment upgrades. And they got 25% water use reduction. And these are all measures that would work in most buildings. And these and other case studies can be found at labbc.com. Next slide. And probably one of the most valued services LABBC provides is aiding customers in identifying and obtaining incentives. We work closely with LADWP, the gas company, and Metropolitan Water District to make sure we are aware of and up to date on all available incentives, any requirements for those incentives, as well as required paperwork to ensure customers get the highest level incentives. Just as a note for customers that the Metropolitan Water District is now offering a new incentive, a $250 toilet incentive for pre-1994 multifamily buildings. So this is available to all customers within Metropolitan Service Territory, which is really all of Southern California. However, it really doesn't impact City of LA buildings because they've been offering $250 and will continue for a long time and will continue to do so. Next slide. Another interesting project type we are fostering is dewatering. Dewatering is when nuisance groundwater at a property is discharged into the storm drain or sewer to get rid of it. There's a way to cost effectively use this water on site instead of dumping it. and surprisingly, it's applicable to hundreds of properties throughout the city. So LABBC advisors are available to assist customers in identifying if this opportunity is viable for your property, and we can help estimate water demand that could be offset, and through using this groundwater, identify permit requirements for each water use, calculate available incentives, and estimate costs and payback. Next slide. An example of a super successful dewatering project is Cedars. A couple of years back, Cedars took on an innovative project at the time. They literally had a river running under the building and were dumping all the water into the storm drain. They now capture that water, treat it with RO, and use it for their cooling, saving over 28 million gallons a year. I think they're at 30 million now. And they received $343,000 from LADWP and the Metropolitan Water District, more likely to get more as they increase their capacity. Next slide. So not all projects are as large as Cedars or require advanced water treatment. Century Plaza Towers in Century City took the groundwater, piped it to a cistern, and started using it for irrigation. Simple as that, saving nearly 3 million gallons per year, and it allowed them to keep their functional turf grass. So to recap, we offer a wide array of support services to assist you in benchmarking your property and implementing water efficiency projects. And I'll turn it back to Dave.
Great. Thank you, Mo. I think that was a great overview from Sarah, Ken, and Mo about all of the resources that are out there, and I'm excited about the collaboration where we're taking this national campaign and finding the synergies with our local policy and the resources that we're offering here locally to take advantage of incentives, rebates, enable that technology transfer, the knowledge transfer between buildings, because as Mo was saying, a lot of these projects are replicable. A lot of this is not new stuff. It's taking a structured approach to evaluating what is the potential, what's out there, what have we done already, what would be cost effective. So I thought Sarah's spaghetti slide, I was wondering where she was going to go with that. I thought it was going to be trying to make sense of the data, is like trying to unravel a bowl of spaghetti, but it was literally spaghetti in the recycling. So we do have some questions coming in, but the call to action from today is to get involved. All the buildings that are in the city of LA are benchmarking water already. Let's do waste as well. I know that's also something we're grappling with. There's no cost to join, and it gets you access to a bunch of resources from BOMA. That's quarterly progress reports from their expert consultants. From us, it's access to advisory services, technical assistance, rebate identification, and then both from BOMA and LABBC, recognition. We also do an annual awards event that hopefully folks are aware of. It's coming up on March 27th, and we have a category for Water Efficiency Project of the Year, and some of the projects that Mo highlighted are past winners of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Renee, who's monitoring some of the questions coming in, and looks like we have some time to get through this.
Okay, so the first question we have is, how are sites collecting water and waste data, and what are the challenges seen thus far in collecting this data?
Sarah, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. So we currently are collecting waste data on our invoices. Some building owners just do this manually. Some, contract out to third parties to take care of this. And waste is similarly only on the invoice as well. There's no real service where you can sort of ping a utility meter and get automated water or waste data. So the main issues with, I'll start with water data. The main issues with water data are just whose name the bills are in, because it's often not the same entity as energy. I know that's the case in a lot of Kilroy properties, and so trying to find in whose name the water is can be a challenge. But I think explaining the W2 challenge and why you want it is helpful. Waste can often be the same thing. The issue with waste is it's often based on a service level. So obviously if you're on a compactor, that's great because we know the actual waste. Otherwise, you're on a service level. And so ideally, the building would be either, have somebody do this in person or be in touch with janitorial to estimate how full any of the bins are when they're serviced. It's one of the questions asked in Waste Tracker. So that's a challenge. And also, as I mentioned earlier, I personally think waste bills are just really difficult to read. I puzzle over them, and I do this for a living. And the other issue is how often the bills come. A lot of my water bills only come every other month, and there's something about that, like not having to do it every month, that means that they can pile up quite a bit. So there's some challenges I see in how the data is collected.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. The next question we have is regarding the water use intensity of 19 gallons per square foot. Is that a daily number?
Did we get Ken back? Or did we just lose him entirely?
Okay.
I can make a guess, which is I think that's a monthly number.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's a monthly number, but we'll confirm. And that's a great data point. Again, I wanted to underline that and put it in our key takeaways. LA's, relative, nearly 50% lower than the average. But I think you're right, though, Sarah. That's probably a monthly number.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like that's the end of the audience questions. So thank you all for joining. Please do follow up. And actually, I have one more slide here with where you can go for more information and to get involved. Thank you for joining us today. Next month's webinar will be a preview of the Innovation Awards, which, as I mentioned, will take place on March 27th. We had a record number of applications this year, and I'm very excited to see who the winners are. We're actually expecting the scoring in today from the judges. So next month's webinar will be a preview of the awards, case studies on all of the finalists. So please do look out for registration info on that, and look out for emails from BOMA GLA. This is a theme for the year with our collaboration with BOMA, is bringing this national initiative home and making LA the #1 participant in this national initiative. So look out for emails on that, and please do visit boma.org/W2 to see more information and get involved. If you have immediate projects in mind, things you're wondering about, want to discuss, proposals you're considering, please do reach out to us at the email address you see below. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to all of our speakers. This was great. Everyone have a great afternoon.